Good morning, everybody. Today's proceedings, like tomorrow's and the day after's, will be live streamed, but after a 15-minute delay. Those with mobile devices may use them to report what they hear in the hearing room, but only after 15 minutes have elapsed since the event that they're reporting. They may not be used for recording or photography. May I make an alteration to the announcement that I made last week? We are sitting a normal full day tomorrow. I explained the reason. My wife's operation had to be postponed for reasons that I don't begin to understand. Thank you for your forbearance. Yes.
Repeat after me. I swear by Almighty God.
I swear by Almighty God.
That the evidence I shall give.
That the evidence I shall give.
Shall be the truth.
Shall be the truth.
The whole truth.
The whole truth.
And nothing but the
and
truth.
nothing but the truth.
Please sit down, Mr. Dell. I'm afraid you have 3 long days ahead of you, but we do have 2 breaks, one in the middle of each session.
Sure. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Can you give your full name, please?
Michael Dell.
Can we have up on screen your witness statement? It's at MPS 0749596, page 1, behind tab A1, sir. You made a statement to this inquiry dated the 12th of August 2024. Is it right that you would like to elaborate on something within that witness statement?
Yes, at paragraph 230 to 232, please.
Would you like to do that now?
It relates to the timing of an incident when, in his evidence, witness Carlo Saracchi said he told me about his relationships with 2 women, and that this was towards the end of 2003. When it was put to me at the Rule 9 preparation of the statement, I was taken aback, and I couldn't remember that happening. On reflection and looking at the evidence hearings and reading statements, I now realise I can pin that meeting down to between September 2001 and March 2002, and it was on a Monday.
And why is it now that you have a clearer recollection of the timing of that disclosure by Carlo Saracchi?
Just piecing bits and pieces together. First of all, Carlo never at any time told me about his relationship with 2 women. If he had done so, particularly at that stage anyway, he would have been shown the door. What he told me, I gave my instruction to the plenary session of the field officers on a Thursday. On the Monday, he came to me and said that he'd had a sexual relationship with a woman who I established was not an activist. The relationship was ending, and so was his marriage. So it relates to one woman, and it relates to that time period. I know it was that time period because it was during the time that HN53 and I were beginning to investigate James Thompson, and it was before James Thompson was kicked off in March 2002. So it was in that early period, and I am as certain as I can be that it would have been in September to October of 2001.
And is that because of a particular global event that happened?
Yes, 9/11.
And why do you remember it following fairly shortly after 9/11?
9/11, Thompson was going to Indonesia before the 9/11 event occurred. I was going with him because I'd already developed suspicions about him, so I thought, well, I'll go with him. And that was cancelled, of course. Thompson went to Indonesia, and HN53 had by this time begun his investigation into it.
We're
It
going
was-
to come on to look at that in some
Yes.
detail a little bit later
Okay.
on.
Yeah.
But what essentially you would like to do with your witness statement is make that a little clearer at paragraphs 230 and 232A to say that that disclosure by Carlos Araki was just after
Yes.
the 9/11 incident, after James Thompson had been to Indonesia, so between end of September, end of October 2001.
Yes, and it's
That's-
not just the timing, but the substance of it. He told me about one woman.
Okay. We understand at that time he would have been in a relationship with Lindsay,
Yes,
the woman known to the inquiry as Lindsay.
yes.
Looking at this witness statement then, apart from that clarification, do you stand by your witness statement and the contents therein, do you say are true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, I do, and yes, they are.
Thank you. Looking first at your background, you joined the Metropolitan Police Service 3rd of September 1979, and you'd worked before that for about 8 years as an economics teacher in adult education, is that right?
Yes,
You joined Southall Uniformed Duties and Crime Squad,
yeah,
and you were in that role from 1979 to 1984.
yes,
And at your witness statement, page 2, paragraph 5, we can see that you talk about that in some detail.
yeah.
In terms of your experience of policing a diverse community, were you in that position at the time of Blair Peach's killing, when he was struck by a police baton and
No.
died following a march on St George's Day on the 23rd of April 1979?
No, I hadn't joined the job. In fact, I was shopping in Southall on the very same day.
You recall that happening,
Yes.
and do you recall the impact that that had on the community that you were serving in?
Yes, well, I actually joined was posted to Southall 8-9 months later. And yes, there's obviously an atmosphere of tension. It wasn't individual relationships between the police and the community. It was how the community felt it was being dealt with by the police as a whole. Because the Blair Peach thing, as you will know, the incident there was part of a pattern of right-wing National Front infiltration, 76, 79, 81, where the police were not being seen to protect the community. If you like, I can go on about it, but the day-to-day relationships with the individual police officers, as I experienced in 4.5 years there, were pretty good. They just felt let down by the police as a whole.
There was the Race Relations Act 1976 had just come into force
Yeah.
not long before that, but it didn't apply to operational policing at the time. Was there any training that you had in relation to race discrimination awareness?
Not at that, but I don't know if you're going to go on, but I can certainly give you my background to my awareness of the notions of institutional racism, which predate the police by about 30 or 40 years.
Well, if you can give us that in brief, that would be helpful.
Well, a pictorial memory is the Los Angeles Olympics, the medal podium, 2 American athletes on the medal podium, Tommy Smith, John Carlos, both black, bowing their heads, raising their fists. As the American flags were raised, we bow our heads to the American flags, but we raise our fists to the notion of black power. And black power wasn't about violent revolution. It was having a share in a society which Stokely Carmichael had identified was structurally racist. And on that point, he differed from Martin Luther King. So I'd been aware of, but that's the pictorial memory, I'd been aware of Stokely Carmichael, and I forget his co-author, making that distinction and arguing with Martin Luther King about racism. Martin Luther King was intent. These people are bad, they intend to be racist.
So did you have a sense when you were working in the police in Southall in the 70s and early 80s that there was institutional racism within the police service at that time?
I followed an academic course for a couple of years in the mid-80s, and I'm going to answer your question. But it was there that I first came across the academics who, in certain circumstances when they were discussing racism, they'd pick out Brixton and Southall as two opposing examples of how racism is manifest, but also how it impacts the community and police-community relations. So that in Brixton, you have a long-running, a chronic resentment of the way individuals were being policed. And the discontent was simmering, so chronic. Whereas in Southall, it was sporadic but explosive.
And did you see those as legitimate concerns that the community had because of the conduct of police officers at that time?
Yes, because each time they were literally invaded by the National Front. The Blair Peach thing was, Blair Peach, as you well know, responding to provocation by the National Front holding an election meeting at Southall Town Hall on the 23rd of April.
So sticking with this idea of institutional racism, when that was part of the Macpherson report later on in 1998 following Stephen Lawrence's death, did you accept that? You understood that to be true, did you?
Yes, and I think unfortunately...
From your own experiences?
Yes, I think unfortunately both sides, for want of a better framing of it, both sides have misinterpreted what he was on about. People like my colleagues, me, would say, look, I'm not racist, what's it got to do with me? But Macpherson wasn't saying that. But similarly, those who were really pleased that he had espoused the notion of institutional racism, compared to Scarman, who hadn't, they were in fact saying, how can you deny that there are incidents of individual races? How can you put forward the bad apple argument when everybody knows that if you are a policeman, you must be racism? So they've got it wrong. And it was like a reinvention of the notion of original sin for anybody who was brought up a Catholic.
So you understood it to recognise that the structures in place, the decisions and the policies that were applied were racist in nature, and the impact that it had on non-white people within the community.
The practices and procedures. The difference between Stokely Carmichael, Black Power and Martin Luther King.
Going back to your chronology, 1984 to 1987, you were posted to Wembley as part of the core team there, is that right?
Yes.
And then you were part of the territorial support group from 1987 to 1990.
Yes, I joined it on its foundation, yeah.
What was your experience of public order policing then at that stage? Were you policing some of the big demonstrations of the day?
We were level 1 public order trained, and we had refresher training every 3 weeks. Our core function at demonstrations was to be a reserve. Scarman had noted how the problems at Brixton festered and went over into riots because there wasn't an immediate resolution of the immediate problem, which was public order. So we would spend a lot of our time in reserve so that if a decisive intervention was required, we would make it, and we would do it properly.
But you had an understanding of public order policing from being on the ground, from being
Oh, yes.
at the
Oh,
events.
yes, yeah.
Were you at Trafalgar Square on the 31st of March 1990, which was the poll tax demo in Trafalgar Square?
No, we were off. We could see it coming, and the job wanted to save money, so it kept the TSG on their rest days, borrowed all their vans and equipment, including 12 of our vans, which were all wrecked. And so that wasn't handled properly because there was one TSG unit, the Commissioner's Reserve Unit, on duty that day.
What was the view of public order TSG people on the ground towards the left wing during such demos?
Oh, it didn't make any difference whether it's left wing or right wing. I remember being
what
at
was
one
the
demonstration
attitude
in
towards
Peckham when a colleague said to me, if this lot, and it was the National Front, if this lot had 2 brain cells, they'd be dangerous, wouldn't they? I think I would urge people just to sit back a bit and think that the police just might have had a broader view than, they are left wing, therefore they are the baddies. It's just a nonsense. The greater violence actually came from the right wing.
Did you have any sense of undercover policing from Special Branch feeding into public order policing at the time? Were you
No.
aware of intel informing the public order policing response to such
There was
demonstrations?
always an SB threat assessment, but not of undercover policing, no knowledge of that at all.
You joined Special Branch as an inspector in October 1991, and you worked on various squads.
Yes.
Once you joined Special Branch. You were part of C Squad as the Detective Chief Inspector from May 1999 to May 2001.
Yes.
That's the posting you had immediately before becoming a manager of the SDS, is
Yes.
that right? Looking at your witness statement then at page 3, paragraph 5, and over the page to page 7, paragraph 7, we can see that you say you received daily intelligence product from the SDS in that role.
Yes.
Taking care over to what intelligence you got, how was that intelligence used in respect, specifically in relation to public order?
I think it's a good time to correct a false notion that Peter Francis might have given about what an SB was about. An SB was not about C Squad SB was not about collecting intelligence with a view to turning it into either evidence or operational material. The point of an SB as regards C Squad was the creation of a database on individuals with as much detail as you could afford. Now, I'm not saying that's the right thing to do or the bad thing to do, but that was it. This notion of we would try to avoid opening a file on someone is erroneous. A file is just a cardboard collection of things. If an individual has their own file, then they're someone of interest. But there wasn't an automatic 4 mentions in records and you get a file. No, SB Records would nudge you and say, this person's getting a lot of mentions, just so you know. And I could then say, now for a comprehensive report on this person. Or, yeah, okay, that's fine. This person could have 200 mentions. They're of no interest to us. So, where did it all go? It went to the relevant desk to build up these profiles of activists. And obviously it's been the subject of much evidence
And
here.
is it right then that the files were on individuals as opposed to on groups?
Oh, there were groups as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did those files on individuals, how were they destroyed? Was there a destruction policy?
There was a review policy which was managed by Records, but it was in my time DCI, because the chief superintendents had been long ago rationalised, we didn't have one. It came down to me whether to retain it, review it in a year. But there was an automatic RBF system where a file would come down in any event to you for review, and you would decide, should we keep it? Should we send it to public records? Should it be destroyed? Should we review it in a year? Should we update it?
Were you ever aware of lawyers for activists having a file, an SB file? And I'm thinking specifically about Michael Mansfield,
Yes.
QC as he was then.
Yes, I wasn't myself then. I've heard that Mr. Mansfield had a file from this hearing, and I think since the 70s.
Yeah. So you were there in 1999 to 2001. So this is just at the end of the Macpherson inquiry. Do you recall having a file on Michael Mansfield?
In 1991.
Sorry, in 1999. 1999 to 2001 you were
I
in
don't
C
recall
Squad.
ever Mr. Mansfield's file coming across my desk. So I know from this inquiry that he's got a file. That's the only reason I know he has a file. I don't share the view that he was the devil incarnate. And I remember going out my way to attend a presentation he gave at the Yard to a couple of hundred people because we had invited him in. We wanted for him to tell us how useless we were at doing our job.
Please, MPS 0003126. Mr. Dell, this was not in the bundle that was supplied to you with your Rule 9 request.
Yes.
But it is a note that was written up by Noel Waugh, one of the DSs in 2000, following a meeting with you on the 17th of March 2000. Sorry, in fact, the meeting with you came just shortly after that first meeting on the 17th of March 2000. It was prior to you joining SDS, in that you were in C Squad, and you're recorded as as being present at a meeting with Noel Waugh regarding the RTS Reclaim the Streets May Day Extravaganza 2000. Bear with me while I find your name in this document. Yes, it's this penultimate paragraph. So there's a discussion about the May Day Parade in 2000, what activities are going to take place there, what organisations are involved. PD is a reference to Psycho Dream, which was HN14, and RH was a reference to Red Herring, which was HN3 Jason Bishop.
Yes.
HN14 being Jim Boylan,
Yes.
if you recall.
Yeah.
And there was a discussion about leaflets being provided and what was going to be done with those, and the involvement of those two officers in the May Day 2000 demonstration. The meeting that took place subsequently, that's referred to in the penultimate paragraph,
Yeah.
is a meeting that Noel Waugh had with TN0019 and TN0020. You can look at your cipher list if you need to recall who those two people are. And Mike Dell.
Yeah.
And the discussion was about the legal viability of such searches. The proposal was that police were going to search property with the leaflets in it that had been provided and couriered, if you like, by Psycho Dream HM14, and raid a property containing those leaflets. It goes on to say that the matter will be raised with Solicitor's Department for a definitive answer in relation to the legality of that search, but should it be deemed non-viable, then the same names will be subject to a fairly overt series of stops or surveillance and general harassment. The names that are being referred to there are those that are in bold in the paragraph preceding, people who were involved in RTS. It goes on to say in that penultimate paragraph, we will need to liaise closely on this to ensure that we have control of certain elements of such action, but overall such a resolution should not only seriously disrupt the organisation of the May Day event, but also materially assist PD, Psycho Dream, in his withdrawal strategy. So there's a sense that we're trying to disrupt the organisation of their RTS's activities at the May Day event, and at the same time assist PD in his withdrawal strategy. So there's an operational reason for doing that as well. The May Day event is an annual event, a big demonstration supported by trade unions, something that is known to police well in advance, a yearly event. Various political groups will attend, and that was known to the police and the SDS. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
In terms of disrupting the activities of RTS, is that something that you were keen to happen? Is that an objective both of C Squad and SDS? Is that what is being relayed here by this note?
Not an overall objective, and sorry for the same old line, but I've only got a hazy recollection of this. I can only deduce that it's in the context of a previous May Day demonstration. Would it be J18, where there was serious disorder a couple of years previously?
And we know that HN14 and HN3 were involved in that as well, J18, weren't they?
I don't know. I assume so. The matter will be raised with Solicitors Department. That would have been my line anyway. I'm sure that would have been me.
To check whether the action in disrupting their
Yes.
activities would have been lawful.
Yes, indeed.
Can you recall what the outcome of that was?
No, I can't. No idea.
But certainly that was the objective for that event. Is that fair to
Yes,
say?
it was to mitigate the expected disorder. So it wasn't a question of disrupt the organisation. I didn't write this. I wouldn't have written it the same. It was to mitigate the possible effects of disorder, not to disrupt them, not to stop them doing what they wanted to do, just for us to get a grip.
Were there any other meetings like this
And
prior to...
can I just say, I wouldn't associate myself with the last line.
Well, I was going to go on to that as well.
right,
The
sorry.
bit that suggests that C Squad were delighted with such developments and were sure in turn that Uniform will relish the opportunity to be let off the leash. What's being conveyed there?
It's that typical SB penchant for poetic licence. I just wouldn't have written that. I mean, that is nonsense. Uniform will relish the challenge of being let off the leash by SB. It's just silly.
Was there a sense that TO20 were being fed information about individuals whom they would then seek to target during a demonstration like this to harass and to prevent them
no.
from taking part in
No.
a public demonstration?
No, not at that time. The information TO20 would get would be very generic. And
Would you have recognised that at this time as being an interference with those individuals' rights to assemble
Yes.
and demonstrate?
10 and 11, yes, I would. And I would hold it was necessary in the circumstances. Traffic passes along a road, but sometimes the police have to stop you exercising your right to drive down the road.
So the demonstration itself was a lawful
Oh, yes.
restriction on other people's rights to use the road, for instance?
Yes. Yeah, well, no. I was meaning that as a metaphor. The intention was not to stop the event. It was to mitigate the potential disorder and to water it down a bit. That's what I'm deducing from this, because I can remember very little of what went on C Squad. I can the SDS, but not so much C Squad.
Do you recall other meetings like this where SDS would meet with C Squad in the run-up to a big event and look at how, as you say, the demo might be mitigated or any public disorder be mitigated or the event be disrupted itself?
When I say I can't recall any, that doesn't mean to say they didn't happen. But I can't give you examples of it.
MPS 0036265, please. Again, I'm sorry, this one was not in the bundle supplied to you at the time of your Rule 9. It's it's later on. It's when you're DCI within the SDS. And it's a file note from the 24th of August 2004 in relation to ring wraith, which was HN18,
Yeah.
and a potential compromise.
Yes.
in relation to him.
Yes. Yes, I'm familiar with that. Yeah.
Okay, and you recognise the group Globalised Resistance.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Can we go to page 3, please, paragraph 2? This reference to
Yeah.
your actions to take place, consider with C Squad whether we should leave Globalised Resistance intact or through Ring Wraith mount a destructive operation.
Yeah.
If you can just decrease that, please. You can see that this is a note, this time authored by you. What did you mean by that, mount a destructive operation?
This note had an audience of one, and that was Commander Janet Williams. She was very new to the branch, and naturally, for any outsider coming in, couldn't be expected to have a grasp of the ins and outs of all the individual groups. This briefing note was addressed to her to illustrate that we were in control of Ring Wraith. There was no threat to him because she was extremely worried about his personal safety. And I demonstrated the line of options that we could do if we wished to illustrate that, no, we are controlling this, he's perfectly safe. As an aside, the last thing I would want to do was disrupt Globalised Resistance, because just as they would start again, we'd have to start all over again. There'd be absolutely no point in doing that. But it was to establish to a person whose experience was different that we were in control and he is safe. Because I had quite a difficult time when he was compromised in terms of, like, Commander Williams wanted him to be accompanied by a surveillance team, a team to intervene if there were trouble. When he was being confronted with his activities by Globalised Resistance, she wanted him to wear an alarm on him, panic alarm and all the rest.
Okay.
And that was quite natural. I could see that from an outsider. And so...
Was it something that you knew you could do if you wanted to?
No, I wouldn't know how to. How would I disrupt? How would I do a destructive operation on Globalised Resistance lawfully? Unlawfully, and in the Peter Francis world, I would smear them or something. That's fantasy.
What about creating discord within the group itself?
Why?
Amongst the organisers?
Why?
Interpersonal relationships? Was that anything that you recall having been considered during your time during SDS?
No. How would you do that? What a waste of time. You wouldn't want to do it. This was for an audience of one.
Would a purpose for doing it, a motivation for doing it, be to mitigate their activities, so mitigate their involvement in public demonstrations or direct action?
No, I mean, you haven't got long enough, but I could go back to the 60s, and when they were known as the International Socialists, I was a student. I think their outlook from the left is damn sight more coherent than a lot of groups. And I have a lot of sympathy with what they're saying. I just think they come to the wrong conclusions. So I'm not in any way prejudiced against them. And in operational terms, why would I bite my nose off to spite my face?
The next bullet point down acknowledges the obvious political nature of SDS policing. Would you say that is a fair assessment?
Yes, I mean, that takes me back to Grosvenor Square. And again, I'm a student at the time. And the feeling was the government just did not know what was going on. France was in 3 days of, the French Republic was going to fall in 3 days. Is it going to happen here? Unless you were alive at the time, you couldn't imagine the febrile atmosphere. And yes, and I'm having a bit of a dig there, given its failure to understand the political world outside general orders. General orders is the Bismarck's New Model Army manual of how you tie your shoelaces to what you do in the event of a nuclear war. It would tell you everything you wanted to know if you were of a bureaucratic mind that you needed to be told. And I'm having a bit of a dig there and saying that the political world is a bit more complex than what's in general orders.
In terms of the last bullet point, you say that you acknowledge in terms of closing operations which are no longer valid for whatever reason, my staff and I, to the cost of our own mental equilibrium, are pleased to stand by our record. In terms of that, you've talked about the political environment. Obviously, by 2004, the date of this note, the political environment is not that febrile state it was in back in '68. Were you of a mind that there were operations that were no longer valid around that time and that you should consider closing them?
Yes, I did.
Being very careful now as
Yes.
to closed areas.
I closed HN 77s, and I had the intention to close 4 others. Do you want the HN numbers?
If you want to write them down, please.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
You
That's
mentioned
in
that.
addition to HN 77, who I closed.
You mentioned their HN 60 that we know was David Evans,
Yep.
and HN 3 we know is Jason Bishop.
Yep.
And in terms of closing those operations, what were your considerations around that?
In relation to those two, there were residual public order requirements, and I'd wanted to replace HN3 with 77 to fulfill that residual requirement. I didn't want to set off a new officer on a new 4 or 5 year term, because after this, the public order requirement in the middle of 2005 had been fulfilled, then 77 would leave and HN3 would have left. HN 60 was, I had to resist, in fact, extending his tenure in relation to the activities at, there was a particular focus of activity for the animal rights groups, which was popping up again, and I was asked by, I think, Chief Superintendent Mitchell, on behalf of Commander Williams, would I retask HN60 or task him into that area? And my answer was no. We've got as far as we can. Prosecution is the next thing. You need a criminal undercover in there to get the evidence. And
why at the cost to your own mental equilibrium? Just looking at this final bullet point.
Yeah, I had a bit of a. I think it's on record. I had a difficult time with HN77.
And in terms of standing by our record, was there a sense that it's better to keep people out in the field? What was the record? Was it that...
Oh, no.
Okay. What's
Well, it was
that
the
relating?
record of dealing with things. Thompson had gone. HN77 was going at this time. And...
So your record, you're saying, is closing down those operations which
Yes.
are no longer valid?
Yeah.
You mentioned just a moment ago about not wanting to cut your nose off to spite your face in relation to globalised resistance. Was there a sense that it was better to keep somebody going because it would be much harder to start in another group from scratch? What did you mean by
Not
that?
keep it going, but not destroy it. There was no reason to destroy it. No, that was me saying, I've got these options. I am powerful, if you like, and I choose not to do that. I choose to keep him on in this area. And Janet Williams had legitimate concerns, and I was assuaging those.
Was there any sense by this point then, at 2004, that the SDS was struggling to justify its continued existence at all?
Not the SDS, but its deployments in particular areas. And that is not a criticism of my predecessors. 9/11 was the turning point. And coinciding with an ever-increasing extreme right-wing threat. And the direction was obvious. All you had to do was lift your chin up and look at things.
In terms of your experience, you didn't serve as a UCO, did you?
No.
You had experience of handling sources.
Yes.
You talk in paragraph 27 of your witness statement about the plurality of perspectives brought about by either the DI or the DCI,
Yes.
being of a non-undercover background.
Yes.
And how do you say that impacted upon the management of the SDS?
It was the differing perspectives offered. I actually put in a briefing note about the same thing, that the branch was like any other organisation which until 1991 promoted within itself. It had its own promotion system. And I thought the people I worked with were excellent. But obviously, any organisation which is inward-looking becomes insular, becomes subject to groupthink.
And so an injection of somebody from outside of that group
Yes.
would bring a different, wider perspective.
Yeah, you make a former UC as a manager, and he's more likely to run the outfit as it was run when he was a UC. As I see it, the SDS was evolving all the time. Not quickly enough. I share the blame for that. But it was evolving, and I thought that HM53, who had been a UC, the DI, and I think we knitted together quite well as a partnership in terms of differing perspectives. And I don't buy this notion that if you've never fallen under a bus, you don't know that it hurts. It's a very myopic view.
Did you have the sense that the undercover officers that you managed could come to you and would come to you with issues that they were having in the course of their deployment?
Yes, I think that was, if I had to evaluate myself, that was possibly my strongest suit. And that not having been a UC, I think I can say it didn't hamper me.
I'd like to ask you about your understanding of subversion.
Yes.
At paragraph 19A of your witness statement on page 8, you talk about subversion referring to actions intended to overthrow or undermine parliamentary democracy.
Yes, paraphrasing, yeah.
We can see that that's consistent with the Security Services statutory duties under the Security Services Act of 1989.
Yeah.
That's a definition, would you agree, that depends solely on intent and not potency? So it's not looking at the actual capabilities of a group, but looking at what their intention might be.
The potency one takes us back to 68. No one knew what was happening. They knew a demonstration was going to happen in the March of 68. But they, for the big one, the 27th of October 68, was the problem. What is the potency? Is it going to cause trouble? And strangely, there was a bit of trouble, but it was a massive demonstration, which was largely trouble-free.
The 1984 Home Office guidelines on special branch work in the UK refer to threatening the safety or well-being of the state.
Yes.
So it's a difference observed actually in the next subparagraph of your witness statement, if we can bring that up. And it goes over...
And there's the economic well-being, yeah.
Exactly. And that paragraph, if we can have it side by side on the screen, goes over leaf, so 19B. And you can see that the only difference essentially is that the Home Office guidelines includes activities which threaten the safety or well-being
Yes.
Of the state. The 1994 guidelines, which would have been in place when you took over management of the SDS, are behind MPS 0727509. Page 5, paragraph 23. Behind tab B24, just for reference. Fourth bullet point there talks about threatening national security.
Yeah.
Your understanding of subversion, does it follow that you considered the requirement to threaten the state didn't add anything beyond the intention to overthrow parliamentary democracy?
I'm not sure I understand the premise of that.
Was it in your mind, when you were thinking about subversion, was a serious consideration, in your view, the capability of a group or individuals to actually threaten the state, threaten national security or threaten the well-being of the nation?
Yeah, see what you mean. I'd always regarded the Socialist Review group, became the IS, became SWP, as never in any sense being capable of overthrowing the state. And I think I can speak for them in saying that neither did they. That was not part of their philosophy and strategy. The driving force behind SWP is the notion of the revolutionary cadre, straight out of the Cuban Revolution, where a small group of people politicise in the Vietnam War days, educate in the 2026 days other people. And through things like anti-racism, anti-fascism, industrial activity, revolution comes from below. And at no point is anybody, by the way, suggesting we're going to get the guillotine out and put it in Parliament Square. They're not saying that. It's a revolution in a system.
And did you consider that to be a real threat at the time when you were managing the SDS?
Not that as a threat. My interest was in the people who were coming into the SWP and finding it was too tame for them. And that's why in refocusing the unit, I would have had just one person there to cover that broad left. But it's the people who join the BNP and find it's not violent enough, so go off into Combat 18. And activists who pass through the SWP who might be thinking this is just a bourgeois talking shop, bourgeois socialism.
Moving to page 3 of this document, the 1994 guidelines, we can see at paragraph 11, on page 3, that around the middle of the page, we can see counter-subversion there. It says special branches will continue to investigate subversive activity, though, as with counter-espionage, at a level commensurate with the current much reduced threat.
Yeah.
Did you recognise that was a much reduced threat?
Yes, when I was on E Squad, I remember discussing it with HM58, who was on C Squad at the time. They'd received the letter from the security service.
So from 94 onwards, at least,
Yes.
there's a much reduced threat.
Yes, yeah.
From the left, and obviously
Yeah.
that's post-global
Yeah.
politics, isn't it, with the fall of the Soviet Union and
Yeah,
the
the Berlin Wall.
and that sort
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah.
By 2004, so now we're post 9/11 in 2001, it's behind tab B165, UCPI 2789, please, page 4. Paragraph 4, page 4, paragraph 7, we can see then essentially the same gist, is that little potential for any group to undermine or overthrow parliamentary democracy. And this is 2004, so 3 years into your tenure. So again, was that in your mind? I think you've explained already that
Yes.
this is not something that was the focus that you had under your management.
It was not a focus I didn't have. Sorry.
Yeah, that it was something that you didn't have a focus on, this subversive activity.
No,
as being something that needed to be reported on.
Not quite the opposite. I would have had difficulty in justifying the existence of SB if it were just for public order. I would have had great difficulty supporting that notion. Ours was the police officer walking down the street 3 a.m. to prevent burglaries, to see if burglaries have occurred. We were there, there were only 10 of them. We were there to be able to answer the question, what's happening, what might happen.
So it's this sense of trying to identify any of those individuals that you earlier identified as that this idea of the revolutionary cadre, that it's, you've got somebody in place. If somebody happens to come in that has the personality to mobilise the group in a different direction, that's what the purpose of the SDS was, essentially, to raise that flag.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. In that sense, then, in that context, did counter-subversion work in the form that the SDS took it?
Yeah.
UCOs infiltrating groups long term.
Yeah.
Was that warranted for that purpose that you've described, identifying the revolutionary cadre, or was that disproportionate given the risk that there was of that happening?
Two things. The revolutionary cadre, Globalised Resistance, SWP, would see itself as being that. But I'm not saying they're the violent, bloody revolution types. They're providing a group for people who might pass through, or given that their activities what ranged over anti-fascism, anti-racism, industrial things, it was to educate them in the creed, if you like, and it's what comes out of that. That was my concern. And sorry, I've lost the thread on the second part of your question.
That's all right. Was it disproportionate to use this intrusive policing tactic to try and identify such individuals?
No and yes. No, because you'll only find out by having a look. Yes, we'd had a look, and the unit needed refocusing. And that wasn't a systemic fault. That was 9/11. And that's what I hoped to do. And I was disappointed because it was like walking through treacle trying to get it refocused. But there you are. We
know, I'm going to be very short on this point, we know that when you took over the SDS in 2001, we'd had HN15 Mark Jenner in Hackney reporting on people like Norman Blair of Class War, Mark Metcalf of the Colin Roach Centre.
Yeah.
Were you aware of his operation?
Yes.
And those individuals, are those the type of people that you be looking to report on as revolutionary cadres, or?
It's not that, but if Mark Jenner, who was not on in my time, but if Mark Jenner is deployed into that area, he is going to report on what is going on. And rather than Mark Jenner work it out in his head how the mosaic might fit into a jigsaw, and make judgments about that, no.
Towards the end of your tenure, we have HN18, Robert Hastings being deployed into London ISM, the International Solidarity Movement.
Yes.
Atif Chowdhury was the person that he was targeted towards. Why was Atif Chowdhury a particular individual that was targeted in his operation?
He wasn't. The intention, it wasn't. Context, Robert Hastings is deployed for a few months before I retire. Following this inquiry, I was disappointed to see that he had not gone the way I had wanted him to go. ISM was just a jumping point. If you joined the entirely harmless ISM group, you would be invited to go to Palestine and help out on refugee matters. This was a legend building on the hurry up. Again, we're 3 years after 9/11, we're still dragging our feet. This was a quick way into getting credibility. I was dismayed to see that he'd stayed there, that he'd had actually been offered the chance to go to Palestine, and then, having established his legend, if I'd been there still, I could have redeployed him somewhere else. So there's never an intention to target them.
What about HN104's targeting and individuals, particularly the marshalling group, Dan Gilman, Steve Headley, Paul Heron? What did you feel about those people that he was infiltrating and reporting on?
He was
in a similar kind of fashion?
He was in the right area. But again, at 2005 when I retired, no one would have been there. I would have had one. It turned out the person I had in mind, or the role I had in mind, was actually fulfilled by, is it 18? As a roving role. And it came about
81. Do you mean?
No, not 81. You've got the name Simon Wellings.
Oh, 118. Yes. Yeah.
118. Sorry,
118,
yeah, 118.
That's okay. Everybody gets 118.
So he
and
was
18.
fulfilling that role, but that would have been it on the left. It would be the other two groups I've described. So, and also, could I just say that in the context of 104, it is complicated by the fact that I'm not sure which bits of 104's operation I can believe in retrospect. I'm sure we'll be coming on to it later. So, if there is exaggeration there, if there is a ramping up of an operation that doesn't really justify it, unfortunately, looking at the inquiry and the evidence given to it, I'm now not surprised that these qualifications about his deployment are being suggested. So...
Sir, I note the time we've gone over the normal break time.
Because we had a rather long break earlier, it was 10 minutes all right now. We'll break for 10 minutes.
Mr. Dell, you mentioned just before the break that you could see no justification for running the SDS purely for public order intelligence in the absence of any subversive intent. Is that a fair summary?
Yes, but by that I mean also that a public order event which gets out of order and then starts impinging on the integrity of the democratic process, which includes the right to demonstrate, I would, if the intent were to do that, then I would regard that as subverting parliamentary democracy.
But pure public order itself comes second to the subversive intent.
Yes,
And-
and I know that's not the majority view, I don't suppose, but that was my view of it.
Does the same also apply in relation to the prevention or detection of serious crime? We can see that you've referred to that in your witness statement, page 7, paragraph 17A to C. And it's at little c that you refer to that other objective of the SDS in terms of prevention and detection or prosecution of serious crime. If you want to refresh your memory, it's there on screen in front of you, but essentially that comes in second place.
I refer to it as a secondary aim, yeah.
Where did your understanding of this primary function come from? Was that something that was led from the Home Office or further up the chain in your line of command? And I'm thinking Detective Superintendent McLaughlin, or Detective Chief Superintendent Colin Black, or Commander Roger Pierce. I think those are the three people directly above you when you took over command of the SDS.
My understanding of what I thought the SDS was for, do you mean?
Yes.
No, I worked it out. You can't justify an outfit like that just to decide how many are going to turn up at a demonstration. That is part of it. And that is part of how, when I was speaking to TO20, I would market it, because I knew what they at that particular time wanted. I can help you with that bit of it, but it's not the fundamental raison d'etre of the SDS. So no, I just worked it out myself. Oh, it seemed self-evident.
Was it any part of the conversation you had with HN58 in terms of his handover to you?
No.
Where in that analysis would animal rights protesters fall? And I'm thinking particularly, HN16, James Thompson's infiltration of the Croydon Hunt saboteurs, or HN60's infiltration of the London animal activists.
Yes. It plainly into the second category of serious crime. I'm on record there in Thompson's evidence as to what I thought then about the seriousness or otherwise of animal rights in terms of SDS. And I didn't think there was the same need for action as in earlier times.
What about environmental activists?
Yeah.
HN3 and HN77?
And they're
both
on the
first
list of
and RTS.
operations I was going to close, yeah.
There has been reference in the evidence that we've heard in the inquiry, and this is behind tab B33. I'll bring it up on screen for you. MPS 0527 362 page 2, fourth paragraph. We can see reference there to serving independent groups of customers with entirely distinct requirements.
Yeah.
Who is being referred to there in terms of the independent groups of customers?
Well, this is 1997,
Yeah.
so
So that was it seemed to be a shift that was taking place. If we can reduce that on screen, please. It's a memo by Bob Lambert of the 12th of May 1997, and what he's referring to is a bit of a shift or a move to serving individual customers. Was that the sense of the type of customer that you were serving when you took over in 2001?
my sense was that we were serving almost exclusively C Squad.
Was there any sense that you were serving private interests?
No.
What about Selfridges, Security, Debenham Security, or
This is
Boots?
Yes.
Any of those private companies that may have been a target by animal rights or environmental activists?
Yes, that would be in a crime prevention context, and the MPS has, I think it's now called a counter-terrorism crime prevention something or other. Usually sergeants who the information would be passed out through C Squad, area liaison to them as a pure crime prevention thing. That's make sure you've got the shutters up this evening because the police are expecting a bit of trouble. In that context, that was, for me, that was, again, secondary information. It wasn't the fundamental tag, but if we got that information, so we trumpet our value to the rest of the Met by saying, look, we can give you this when you ask for it.
Was there any channel of communication between Special Branch and McDonald's, bearing in mind the context of the McLibel campaign?
This is, when I say it's well before my time, I'm now speaking as a layman, if you like. So I don't actually know. There would certainly have been, I would imagine, crime prevention contact with them. But the ins and outs of the McLibel thing is before my time.
Okay. What about in relation to the litigation around that, the libel action? Nothing in relation to that?
Collusion with them? I mean, I've no idea. Okay. I had nothing to do with it. I just don't know.
I'd like to ask you about training now. You addressed training at paragraph 38 of your witness statement on page 24, and you confirmed that there was no formal training for SDS managers coming in.
No.
To take over.
No.
Save for your handover from HN58, and I think you described that as a shadowing experience for a few months. We note that HN58 states that he retired in July 2001.
So that's when I took over.
So you took over then. I think in your witness statement you suggest that might have been a little bit later, towards August or September 2001, but could it have been July?
Oh yes, yeah. If he retired then, that's the day I took over.
Would specific formal training have helped you in your role of SDS manager?
All training, yes. Could I devise a training course? I'm not so sure.
In terms of targeting, recruitment of UCOs, building legends, tasking, oversight, reporting, well-being, and family support, would more information, more training have been helpful in that regard?
All training is valuable, but I don't think I was in any way disadvantaged in dealing with any of those areas by being a newcomer to the branch, only having had, only 10 years then.
And is that because you had HM53 who was in place when you arrived and was familiar with those processes?
Yes. I think we worked as a good partnership.
REPA, the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act 2000, had not long been in force.
Yes.
What training did you have in relation to that and the principles and and legislation, the framework around that?
Yeah, the formal training, the branch provided, the training department provided training courses for people. And at some point, a RIPA compliance unit was set up in the branch so that papers could be passed through them for checking and quality control, if you like.
Had you had any training before you took over in 2001?
No, but I'd taken an interest in it because of a previous posting, and because on the National SP induction course I had a slot where I would speak about participating informants, and so I just naturally had an interest in keeping myself up to date. And of course RIPA was really directed at informants, and I think it was unsatisfactory in its provision for undercover work. I think most people do, and it's been amended since, of course.
Is that because of the duration of the undercover operations, or why was it unsuitable for your UCO operations?
We tried. Oh, it was in regulatory terms. We were trying to shoehorn ourselves into the requirements of it, and it was, having had experience of handling informants and managing the handling of informants, I was aware that that was a heck of a lot simpler job than the UCs.
So do you think that the RIPA framework wasn't satisfactory at that time? It didn't...
No, it wasn't. And obviously we all know it's the regulatory framework, isn't it? That's the big problem. That if an organisation regulates itself on the inside, well, guess what you're going to get?
Was that something that had been addressed with your senior managers as well at the time?
Did I express those concerns to them? No, gosh, no.
Did they express those concerns in meetings?
The concerns that we must, of course, we have to comply with RIPA, but it's certainly not tailor-made for us.
Was it ever seen as a tick box exercise? It was just a matter of getting things signed off?
Inevitably, in any bureaucracy, which insists on, and I'm not being pejorative when I say bureaucracy, any organisation which insists on a bureaucratic supervision model, of course you're going to get tick box, whatever it is. I liken it to when I was a uniformed sergeant, and if I dealt with a drink-drive case, I worked out that I had to sign my name or put my initials 54 times on 54 different bits of paper. Now, I'm going back 40 years, so God knows what it's like now. You inevitably, any organisation will take the shortcut.
In terms of the content of the handover from HM58 to you, did he show you key documents, policies and guidelines in the SDS?
No, I can't. I can't honestly remember what 58 showed me. I really can't. But obviously, I spent my time, familiarising myself.
Any training materials? Would you have looked at those?
Yes, I did, and I was disappointed to see that HN67 had been on the new TAC course, the SO10 course, and to see if it was any good for us, and disappointed because it wasn't. Because training is not a failure in hindsight. It was obvious at the beginning. But I couldn't design a training course and say, that's what you need. The whole nature of the job compared to criminal UCs was entirely different. And I'm sure we'll come round to the defining concept was trust rather than method and methodology.
We'll come on to that in a moment in terms of training for UCOs. Just in terms of what information HM58 gave to you, did he tell you about the key issues that he'd been dealing with during his tenure?
No.
For instance, did he talk about any potential compromises that his UCOs had had? Did he tell you about women who were searching for some of the officers?
No.
In particular, Helen Steele. Did he tell you about her looking for HN5?
HN5.
John Dines.
John Dines, yeah. No. No.
Did he tell you about the woman known as Alison looking for Mark Jenner?
No.
Did he tell you anything about Rosa, woman that we know as Rosa, looking for Jim Boyling?
No.
In terms of any UCs engaging in sexual relationships, did he tell you about any concerns that he had in relation to the living arrangements of some of the officers, in particular Jim Boyling or Mark Jenner?
No.
Anything about travelling with members of the groups that they were infiltrating?
No. I may be doing him a disservice, and he did, and I've forgotten. But it's the best
It's not
I
his
can
evidence that he did.
Sorry?
It's not his evidence that he
Right,
did it all,
yeah.
or that he had
Right, yeah.
suspicions. What about historical issues that had been dealt with during the course of the SDS in the 90s? Excuse me. Issues such as Mr. Chitty. Were you aware of any issues that had arisen in his deployment?
No, I was aware, I think I was on B Squad and someone mentioned the Chitty thing. And I knew so little about it that about a month ago I had to Google it to find out what it was about, and I didn't find anything.
Stefan Scott, did you know anything about his...
I heard his name from 10 years previously, but nothing.
Was there any sense that war stories were being passed on in terms of a lessons learned exercise?
No, I can understand why they were not, because the whole culture was don't ask, and not about SDS, about the branch. When I left B Squad, a couple of days later, they opened the operations room and they were mounting an operation. You didn't ask your mates on B Squad what's going on then. You just didn't do it. I'd left B Squad then, and that was it. And so in the branch, you would have this culture of people not relaying gossip, fact to each other.
We've heard some of the UCs who have given evidence to this inquiry talk about a don't ask, don't tell sort of culture.
No, it wasn't that. It was Robert Mark says in his 1975 autobiography, thank God I had Special Branch. In that, it was the one outfit in the entire job when he was throwing out 440 corrupt detectives. It was the one outfit he could trust to keep its mouth shut. And that's why some of us are so angry about the origins of this inquiry, how it came out. People just cannot keep their mouths shut.
Do you
now
recognise...
it's come out, I don't have that view anymore. But.
In hindsight, a whistle-blowing mechanism, do you see the benefits of that?
Of course I do. But there was no such mechanism.
What about issues such as drink driving or the use of alcohol or drugs?
Yeah.
Did HM58 relay to you how he might have dealt with those?
No.
Or that there was any issue with those? And I'm thinking in particular in relation to HN123 and or HN4 in relation to their issues with alcohol during their operations.
No, but I became aware through this.
Were you aware that Peter Francis had complained of difficulties he'd experienced during his operation?
Yes, I was very much aware of that.
So that was something that was, in the background?
That was common knowledge, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was your view on that?
I didn't know and still don't know Peter Francis. But obviously with the case which he and Officer A brought against the Met, and it concerned us particularly, yes, it was common knowledge, and there was the feeling that perhaps the welfare needed ramping up a bit, or at least that's what I interpreted it as. Anyway.
So it shone a light on maybe gaps in the welfare
That's
provision.
what I took it to be. That's what I took it to be.
Participation in crime. Did HM58 speak to you about what to do if officers are arrested, are asked to provide evidence in court and that sort of thing?
Not specifically that, but when I was on C Squad when he came over to bounce ideas off me about Operation Lime and the Thompson thing. And he knew what the score was, but he was coming to me just for another opinion as to how we can maximise this situation. And my advice was you just got to disrupt it. And that wasn't new to 58. I think he knew that. But other than that, no, we didn't speak about officers involved in crime.
When you talk about disrupting it, what do you mean?
Disrupting it. If we go by Thompson's script, that activists were getting the gun and all the rest of it, the best we could do would be to disrupt that and get the gun back, to foil the plot so no harm came to anyone. If it had been in B Squad, the operation would have run, and we'd have seen how far we could get to swagging as many as B Squad could. But
in terms of HN58 relaying any information about recruitment of married officers or officers from a stable home life, what did he say about that? Was it known to you to be a policy to recruit officers with that? It was termed an anchor in real life.
Yes, that was it, and I took it as not necessarily married, but a stable background, somebody to offload to. I took that to mean if the partner's gay or whatever, it was just a stable background.
And is that something then you carried on during your tenure?
Not overtly. I could see the merit of it, but it was, for me, it was each case on its merits. A single person might impress me enough to be, they can cope. Someone living with their brother or sister, whatever. I didn't regard it as a rigid rule.
And in terms of that reliance that we've heard evidence about on spouses to provide that support, is that something you looked on at spouses to provide? Was that something that you were counting on?
It was a burden to them, and at the time I wasn't happy with the fact that I couldn't come up with another way of helping the families out with the burden they were sharing. Yes, brought in the policy of you and your family have access to psychiatric help from now till forever. But I think you've heard evidence of officers going round to see the spouses for a second visit and it being regarded by the spouses as, well, what was all that about then? And then in another case, this person seems to be coming round a bit often. In other words, there was a suspicion. And I recognised that from elsewhere in the job. You would have a social do outside the job, and the rank structure inhibited social interaction. It's unbelievable. 3 days after I was promoted uniformed sergeant, I'm at court. 2 members of my old relief are calling me Sarge. And I've been a PC with them 3 days ago. It's this formality in a work environment transmits to the social. And I couldn't work out a way of, look, it would be great if I could arrange to see, usually the wife, every so often. But it would be a formalistic thing. They would regard it as tick boxing. I might be wrong, but that's what I thought.
So whilst you recognised there was a need to support
Massive
the
need.
families of the UCs, in reality that was inhibited.
Yeah, massive need, an unmet need.
In terms of training on equalities, you've talked about your well. Can I ask you about the training following the Macpherson report? Do you remember Mr. Dell, we were talking about the Tradecraft manual.
Oh, yes.
And the fact that you flicked through it. It was in the back office
Yes.
at the time that you took over the SDS. You say you didn't pay much attention because it was more about operational issues.
Nuts and bolts.
Nuts and bolts of the
Yeah.
operation. How did that fit with your interest in having a more hands-on approach to the operations?
The hands-on approach wouldn't be, this is how to get your car MOT'd in a Duff name and stuff like that. Those nuts and bolts, taking the wheels off to fix the brakes. I thought I was driving the car.
Okay. Can we flick to the contents page, please? Here we can see on the first page, in terms of the table of contents, one doesn't have to look very far down at the bottom. Part 5, maintenance, we can see
Yeah.
there at 5.5 and 5.6, alcohol and drugs and sexual liaisons. Had you looked at the contents page, those surely would have stood out and attracted your interest to make sure that, you know, that was something that you were
Yeah.
familiar with as to what your officers were being
Yeah.
told about that.
My mistake. Yeah.
So is it right that you looked at the contents page, you just didn't read down to the bottom?
Probably. I mean, if I'd come across the sexual liaisons bit, I'd just ripped it out, and I would have read intently the rest of the manual.
Were you not even curious to find out what the UCO deployment involved, given that you hadn't been a UCO yourself?
Not the nuts and bolts, but I was sufficiently bothered about it to recruit someone for a new post to deal with just such matters, nuts and bolts, so the DSs could be relieved of these boring little tasks and supervise the UCs and look after their welfare.
Is it really plausible that you didn't even look at the contents page?
If I looked at the contents page, I wouldn't have gone down as far as the bottom, because I repeat, if I'd seen that, I would have read it, I'd have ripped it out and thrown it away.
Is it a significant oversight of management on your part?
It's a mistake. It's not a failure of management, it's just me being a mistake.
Isn't the failure of management on your part the fact that you didn't know what instructions your UCOs were receiving
They're not-
or reading in terms of these significant parts of their deployment?
In my view, it was not a manual of instruction. It was not a manual of policy. It was then, anyway, a loose leaf binder which anyone could contribute and say, I found a better way of getting a driving licence which complies with the rules, but what do you think of this? I thought the subject matter was serious enough to appoint someone to deal specifically and solely with it. But I didn't see it as being a job for the DSs.
Did you ever discuss the Tradecraft manual with your other managers?
No, I didn't discuss it with anyone. No one came to me and said, well, your direction about so-and-so is contrary to what the Tradecraft manual says. Because I got the impression that they didn't bother with it either.
Given that it's the only really written piece of training that the officers received, wasn't it incumbent upon you, being responsible for their training, to read this?
The fact that it's the only bit of training that we had, if you call it training, doesn't add any value. It just shows you how bad the training was.
The other aspects of training have been referred to as officers, former UCOs, giving their advice as to what they did as well. So it's an oral
It's a collective memory.
oral advice, collective memory.
Yeah. as I just repeat, it wasn't a policy manual. It wasn't an instruction as to how you should conduct your operation. These will the little things you will need to do it. Yes, when it was head in hand time, when I was doing the Rule 9 statement, when this was brought to my attention, I just put my head in my hands. I thought, why the hell didn't I see that? That's the best I can do.
You say that nobody brought it to your attention.
No, I didn't say that.
Okay.
It was there. I could have got it. No, not blaming anybody else. Why the hell didn't I?
Sorry.
Look at it.
My question wasn't very clear. Nobody brought to your attention the fact that the Tradecraft Manual directly contradicted what you said about there being no sexual relationships permitted. No. Nobody brought that to your attention,
No.
you say. In terms of when you came in and you gave that direction in the plenary session that you talk about in September, October 2001, where you say that you told the officers under no circumstances should sex be a part of your deployment.
Yeah.
It's right, isn't it? We understand now that at least 3 of the officers were in relationships at the time. So we're looking at HN16, HN60 and HN104.
Yes.
Recognising that now,
Yes.
is it fair to say that they probably didn't draw this to your attention because they didn't want to lose their jobs?
Oh, yes. That would certainly be a motivating factor. But they also might, like the rest of them, might not even have read it. Because that's what I hear from a lot of other evidence. They were aware of it, but they didn't pay much attention to it. It's like something you put in your garage and can't find, and then someone finds it 20 years later.
Can we have on screen, please, MPS 00311195? Mr. Dell, this was not in your bundle. It's HN53's itinerary of HN18's induction or training programme.
Mm-hmm.
It's dated the 23rd of December 2003. So HN18 was recruited and was deployed at the end of your tenure, or towards the end of your tenure. And we can see that week 1, various jobs have to be undertaken as part of the training programme. On Tuesday, so second day into the training programme, we can see the penultimate bullet point there is commence study of Tradecraft Manual. So effectively after a strategy meeting with you, presumably in the morning, significant instruction then to commence study of the Tradecraft Manual. If somebody's studying that and they're taking time over it, on day 2 of their induction, it's unlikely, isn't it, that they'll put that to one side and not pay it any attention?
It's for the purpose for which I thought it was intended. Had I read it, that item wouldn't even have been on that training thing.
So did you not look at the training agenda for HN18 who was recruited under your watch?
I looked at the training agenda. I hadn't looked at the Tradecraft Manual.
But you knew that he was being directed to study that manual?
Under the terms of which I understood it to be.
But you didn't concern yourself with knowing what its contents were?
No. Mistake. My fault.
HN18's evidence was that when he was recruited, you and HN53, your DI, attended at his home to meet with him and his then partner, and you mentioned, was it you or HN53 that said sexual relationships were not permitted?
Me.
It would be you. He recalls that his partner found it quite a cynical meeting, and they both had doubts about the seriousness of that comment about sexual relationships not being permitted. What was your recollection about how you said that to him?
No. I know I said it. This goes back to the welfare thing about this rigid rank structure and how the families regard junior, senior officers, if you like. It's everything you do is just a bureaucratic exercise. Well, if I go along there and I say to her that Rob is well aware that he's not to engage in any sexual misconduct, and if he does, he'll be leaving, I don't regard that as box ticking.
On reflection, could it have been that you had a more meaningful discussion about the sorts of issues that Rob Hastings might be presented with during the course of his operation? In which case, a proper sit-down meeting, talk about the temptations of entering into a sexual relationship in his covert identity.
I take your point, but it was an absolute prohibition. So there's nothing to talk about.
We know that HN18 pursued Maya and entered into a sexual relationship with a woman known as Maya.
Yes.
And he says in his evidence that, in fact, he relied on the tradecraft manual.
Yeah, well, he would do, wouldn't he?
And that was written in a permissive way
Yes.
to allow for relationships. Yes. And in fact, what we do know is that he didn't even comply with that because it wasn't a fleeting relationship, and there's no sense in that it would have been a relationship that was condoned. Given that that officer, at least, as well as others we've heard from, relied on the written down, as they thought, policy in this tradecraft manual, was it an oversight on your part not to write down what your direction was, your policy on sexual relationships, and ensure that everybody read that and understood it?
We're having it both ways, aren't we, again? On the 1 minute we're ticks box, and now you're wanting me to cover my backside by making sure I write it down and everybody sign it. Surely a greater impact is made by me fronting up to the person and saying, just be very clear, you'll be shown the door. And there's no ifs or buts about it. Relying on what was in the tradecraft manual. Well, of course he would. Because he doesn't want to admit to it.
And we've heard some officers relying on what they were told by previous UCOs, the fact that sexual relationships were inevitable and almost part of the job.
No one was in any doubt, and you won't have any evidence to the contrary about what my view was on that and what the consequences would be.
HN18 says that he raised the issue of sexual advances towards him in a weekly meeting that was laughed off. And he said in his evidence on the 24th of March of this year, and it's at page 48 of the transcript, just for the record, he said that it's possibly likely that managers were at that meeting. And he said, I don't think they took it seriously. I think the view was it wasn't an issue. You would just have to deal with things. For want of a better term, you are old enough, wise enough, experienced enough. You deal with the issues. Don't bring us any problems. That would be my understanding of the general culture and approach of the SDS. Do you recall that meeting when HN18 says he raised the issue of sexual advances in his deployment?
No, I don't. And it does have a familiar ring, doesn't it, to some of the other evidence you've heard. That, oh yes, I'll latch on to that bit. Don't ask, don't tell business. How does that square with the direct instruction from me, which other officers have said shocked them into silence? There was no discussion when I made the direction, and some people have expressed the view that, oh, surely there was. No. They were so shocked into silence by it. You will not do this, and these are the consequences. And what's he doing there? He's trying to make the best of a bad job and deflect again onto managers.
It's, as you say, reflective also of HM104's evidence, Carlo Sarachi, who said that he was told that he's a big boy and he has to deal with issues himself.
Not by me.
Figure it out. Although you were saying that this was not permitted, do you recognise that amongst the other managers and amongst the UCOs, it was a very different attitude towards sexual relationships undercover?
I can't answer that because I don't know there was a different attitude. I can't speak to what went before, honestly.
And is that because the issue wasn't really discussed in the SDS?
It wasn't discussed because my instruction was right at the beginning. There was nothing to discuss.
And is that part of the problem, perhaps, that people didn't feel that they were able to discuss these issues that they were experiencing undercover?
Well, it depends how far you want to go into that. I don't buy this attitude that these are the brave, jolly sailors and the mermaids are tempting them from the rocks. We had a statement on Friday from a civilian witness saying in YRE and ML, refuting Peter Francis's claims that they'd had a sexual relationship, but making the very pertinent comment, I kept my personal and private life separate. She didn't feel the need to indulge in sexual misconduct or sexual conduct. So why did the officers? That's not to say I didn't appreciate the pressures on them from that direction, and later you might talk about the steps I took to try and assuage that concern.
You're saying from your perspective there was no reason at all why an officer should pursue a woman for a sexual relationship undercover?
No, none at all.
No operational benefit?
No.
And so if they did, is it your understanding that that was purely for their own sexual gratification?
Yeah. My narrative is that it's not difficult to look at the evidence over the years, and you've seen a line of officers deciding this is the lifestyle for me. 2 lifestyle, 3. 1 at home and 1 relating to me and 1 with the women. And I'm going to get paid very well for it. And this is the life I lead. And then when I'm questioned, I'll fall back on tradecraft manuals and nobody told me. I couldn't work it out for myself. What don't they understand about you'll be off?
Sir, I note the time. Perhaps a break for lunch.
We will resume at 2:05.